if we reach that critical mass of people who at least gain understanding of how they can heal themselves, that our planet will be in a much better shape than it is right now.
Hello and welcome to Self Talk. I'm your host, Rachel Astarte. Today I have as my guest Martin Theis. He's a spiritual coach and teacher who focuses on mental and emotional well-being through the art of shamanic journeys. This is a topic that is very close to my heart as a shamanic practitioner, so I'm very excited to welcome you today, Martin, to Self Talk.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, it's been a while. We were just talking before we started recording that we've been planning this meeting for quite some time. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've changed location. Like I started when we made the connection. I was in Germany, went to Hawaii, came back early, and I'm in Germany again. So it's kind of like you've probably been in the same place, but I've been moving around in the background. So it's nice to be here.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful to have you. And we're going to jump right in because shamanism is a topic that people, I think a lot of people know roughly about what it is, and but they don't understand how it's coming into the fold a little bit more in terms of the way people are accessing their own spirits, their own connection to nature and to great mystery or primal unified awareness, or however you want to look at it. But before we get into all of that, I'd love for you to share with the listeners how you got into shamanism and coaching, because you're also a coach. So could you walk us through your experience?
Yeah, so basically, I stumbled into the shamanic journey workshop and it's the teacher that I'm still with. So it's kind of like I had a friend who uh, participated in a workshop, in the really basic shamanic journey workshop, and he talked to me about it. And then I was really interested and started going there as well. And so it's really coincidence in the sense that somebody did it. I never really that, and it was my initiation into the spiritual realm before I was really not aware of that layer or that dimension at all. So it was for me like the first door I stepped through, and after that all of these other doors are opening, but it's still my roots in a sense. And I really love that through the work of the shamanic journeys, or the natural kind of building that connection with nature, that we can see the divine, the great mystery, as you said, in everything. And to me, it was just that eye opener to that all of the religions, everything, all the great mystics and teachers tell us is just, I think Pema Chodron uses the analogy of going up a mountain, and it's just different faces of the mountain that people choose, but it still leads us to the top, right? And I started my coaching practice 5-6 years ago, and started out with a general life coaching, and it didn't really work for me because I felt like this, like, I don't know, I experienced some resistance, some stepping blocks, if you want to, and then I laid it aside and started over and thought about what is my great skill, what is the thing that I am really exceptionally experienced and trained about. And so I, through a year of consideration, working around what is it I want to bring into this world, I really just felt the shamanic journeys and this approach is the one thing that I'm really most knowledgeable about and most experienced about. And so I just started doing that.
Yeah, beautiful. So I would love to get your definition of shamanism. I know that's a big ask,
Mm.
but for people who aren't aware, of what shamanism really is. And I love to ask this question of shamanic practitioners because we have the standard response to what that is, the Michael Harner response, as I call
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
but how would you define it for yourself or for others?
I would say that and Michael Harner is an interesting person that you mentioned, because the core shamanism that he really established in the West is something that I really find is resonating with me very strongly. And the shamanic journeys I learned and I practice and teach are non-medicine based shamanic journeys. So it is the path of that, what Michael Harner talked about, the drumming, the rattling, whatever you want to use. And so my definition of shamanism, or that branch of spirituality, is the wandering of the worlds. And I mean, this applies to many different practices, not only to shamanism, maybe all sorts of spiritual approaches, but an active approach of wandering between non-ordinary reality and ordinary reality. And also to nature has that strong element of teacher. So I would say in the shamanistic point of view, we look at nature, animals, plants, at the whole earth as this living being that can teach us on our journey in medicine walks or vision quests or whatever that is, and that connection to nature, but also using non-ordinary reality to gain experience, gain wisdom, and to bring that back into our material three-dimensional experience.
Yeah, beautifully said. And again, just for people who might not know, when we talk about ordinary reality and non-ordinary reality, ordinary reality is something that we all commonly seem to understand, the material world, the thing that you and I are talking in right now. Non-ordinary reality being the way Michael Harner describes it, as a shamanic state of consciousness, where we are traveling, as you said, between these worlds in an altered state. However that might be. For some people, it's psychedelics work, but we, at least in core shamanism, we use sonic driving, which is the sound of the drum or rattle, to allow us to hit that trance-like shamanic state of consciousness. So I'm just clearing that up for people listening.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about your work. You talk about personal power. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. I want to just read a little something from your website for the listeners. That working with personal power, we're talking about letting go of the limiting thoughts and deep-rooted beliefs that we acquire unknowingly, or that they have helped us cope in certain situations. So we have these things that maybe seem unhelpful, but we acquired them for some reason, and that we still carry them around. What I find really interesting from your website is you say that, they generate a sense of personality or traits that we identify with. And because this podcast is called Self-Talk, that's what we're talking about here, is how are we identifying ourselves in the world? So you talk about letting go of those limiting thoughts and those deep-rooted beliefs, which sounds delightful, but how do we do that? And I'm sure that's part of your coaching. But if you could speak a little bit to those limiting beliefs and how you see it might be possible to let go of them. Hi, it's Rachel here. If you'd like to dive deeper into your own self-development, but you're looking for an alternative to traditional talk therapy, I think you'll love the Foundation of Self Immersion program. For a full year, you'll get dynamic coursework you can complete on your own time, plus weekly coaching calls and monthly one-on-one sessions with me for personal support. Visit foundationofself.com and click on the events page for more information. That's foundationofself.com. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy question to begin with, I would say. I would say, and the personal power I loaned from Carlos Castaneda in the Don Juan books, where he the medicine man Don Juan talks to Carlos Castaneda about that he has to step into his personal power, and to do that by letting go of the stories and everything that he the main character in his books acquired through socialization and all these things that we are exposed to in society,
Hmm.
and these inner talks, as you mentioned. And so um, I think it is, I often see it as an onion kind of. We have this, we have all these layers of added stuff, and we peel them away through these shamanic journeys. And the shamanic journey is so beautiful in my experience, because it allows us to have a conversation or a dialogue more with our subconscious, with some of these things that we aren't even aware of, and we meet
Hmm.
these aspects of ourselves, and they teach us something. And through these teachings, we learn to let go, because we have that inner motivation. It's kind of like that intrinsic motivation to say, well, this is something that served me so far, but I'm just coming always back to the same relationship um, error, or something where I blow off all the time. And I recognize it's pretty much a similar situation. And so I feel like the shamanic journeys, in my approach with my coaching, is just having this dialogue, and through that dialogue seeing really if something serves us to build on it. I say in the pretext of my homepage that we strengthen our strength, but we also see that our weaknesses are just strengths in disguise. So we
Hmm.
find out that my weakness is basically something, if I'm learning from it, is something that helps me grow. And if we take this to a kind of an extreme, traumatic experiences and the things that hurt us the most are usually, in the shamanistic point of view, are sacred wounds that are here for us to learn from them and to help others surpass them and to grow and go through that. So I feel that is the element of personal power that I would say is really strongly facilitated in this process.
Hmm. Yeah, that's that's you touched on a really important point, which I would love to step back into for a second. This idea that our spiritual wound, our spirit woundings, the problems that we have, the weaknesses or issues that we grapple with, are actually helpers and blessings that we can. We don't have to reject them or be ashamed of them or fight them, even if we enlist them as helpers in our healing.
Yeah.
Am I understanding what you meant?
Absolutely. And I think also when you just spoke, I remembered a quote from Ramdas where he says that when we're able to just observe our karma running off, that if we don't try to impose our will onto a certain experience or something, to just say, well, I am a spiritual being having this human experience, and part of that human experience there's kind of like a predisposition to my incarnation, and there are certain
Mhm.
factors that are going to happen.
Mhm.
And if I am able to let go of resisting, as you mentioned, and fighting that, and just stepping back and saying, well, and it's a two-edged sword. If I'm hurting someone, to not say, well, this is just my karma, which is running off. I don't have responsibility for that. So it is a really thin, it's the middle way. It's that thin
Mhm.
line between taking responsibilities for our actions, but also not fighting ourselves, because I really think that we are our biggest enemy on this journey, oftentimes, with how we struggle and fight our these tendencies when I'm down, to really even make myself smaller, or to have limiting beliefs that I just amplify through that
Mhm.
self-talk.
Yeah.
And so I really do think that these wounds, if we are able to at least stop these judgments. We don't have to really say, well, this is awesome. I'm experiencing this really shitty situation. That's what a blessing. That's
Yay!
probably that hasn't happened to me yet, but
Yeah.
at least letting go of that constant um, self-talk in really harsh ways.
Yeah. Why do we do that? I mean, I'm not sure you have the answer, but I'm just putting that out there. Like, what are your thoughts? What is it about the human mind and that makes us just shit on ourselves like that?
Hmm. I, I I don't have the answer. I just have an idea that it is probably that ego condition, right? It is that small self versus the self with a capital S. That
Mm.
where the ego thrives on resistance, on negativity, on emotional turmoil and separation.
Mm.
And the higher self, or the self with a capital S, is that one that which is thriving in love and compassion. And so I think it's probably somewhere defined in the roots of the ego, that experience that we all share to a minor or major extent.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the ego because the ego gets a bad rap. It has a purpose. We talk about the underdeveloped ego and the developed ego in my practice. So
Mm-hmm.
so when we have an underdeveloped ego, it's what you're talking about. It wants to run the show. It wants to say, I'm really important. And so it thrives on your weaknesses because those are the things that say, hey, you need me. You need me to tell you what to do. The developed ego actually works in conjunction with spirit, works in fact, it is as Carol Pearson talks about in her book about archetypes. She says she refers to the developed ego as a container for the spirit that stops it from becoming too flighty, too woo-woo, to me, that's like it stops it from spiritual bypass, which we hear about a lot, where it's like, I'm okay, I just chant, everything's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of doing the deep work necessary to really sit in the dark parts of our being. And I think shamanism is such a beautiful tool for that as well, because when you're in a shamanic state or when you're in one of the three worlds doing work in those worlds, you're there for healing, right? So part of my definition of shamanism is it's in place for the healing of the self, of others, of animals, plants, and planets, that it's there to allow us to get back into alignment, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that
Absolutely.
ring true for you?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I feel if somebody asks me for a definition of shamanism, I often come with a disclaimer that I am not in any way uh, a person who can do that, because I feel it's so multifaceted,
Yeah.
and because my perception is so limited, my way of using words. But I think what you say is definitely true, that healing of that is probably what also attracts me so much, that I saw the power and the potential in this work, and that I feel that if we reach that critical mass of people who at least gain understanding of how they can heal themselves, that our planet will be in a much better shape than it is right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Or humanity will be. I think the
Yeah.
planet will be fine.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
It's been around
Absolutely.
a lot. It'll just
Yeah.
shake us off. But if we
Yeah.
want humanity to really thrive, I agree completely. Um, so tell us also a little bit more, getting back to your work, you have something called the L.I.F.E system, or
Yeah.
L-I-F-E system. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is based on the medicine wheel. So the four directions, for those who know, it's the medicine wheel is pretty much can be seen as a compass with different directions in it. And it's like multi-layered. There's all so it's like the simplest tool, but the most complex tool I've ever
Yeah.
heard about so far, because I studied it for, or am studying it for such a long time. And what it means is that we, in my system, we learn, we integrate, we fuel, and we evolve. And because it is a circle, it's not, we don't stop when we evolve, but we go back to learning and integrating,
Mm.
fueling, evolving. So it is that circular movement, similar to the medicine wheel I was taught, which is based on the teachings from the Lakota Sioux,
Hmm.
which where we start in the east,
Yes.
where where we start there, and this is why the L of the system is just found in that easterly direction where
Mm-hmm.
spirit is, and then we go to integrate where emotion is, and then we fuel where the physical body or the physical experience is, and then we evolve in the ethereal or in that airy realm, where the ancient wisdom, the sharing of sharing of knowledge in that is, and then we start over again.
Yeah, beautiful. And you get deeper. It's almost like
Yeah,
it's a spiral,
yeah,
really. So yeah, it's you start, but every time you make the cycle, you're farther along, as it were. Does
yeah,
that
and
yeah. Mhm.
absolutely. And I mean, it took me some years, but I thought sometimes when I was in a similar place, for me, it was often connected with depression or with a
Mhm.
depressive state. And I was just like, why am I here again? I thought I worked through
Yes.
this,
Yeah.
and then to realize this is a spiral, we might be in the same coordinate, kind of like in the same direction or in the same
Hmm.
coordinates, but we have moved higher, lower, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
And, so I think it's a really beautiful way of seeing that we'll come there again
Hmm.
in I think in the Indian like Indian India, in the
Hmm.
Indian Hindu tradition, the wheel of the Naraka world is what Alan Watts calls the realm of the demons, and the kind
Yeah.
of like that lower realm, right?
Right.
So, and he talks about that wheel of samsara, where we just continuously go up and down and up and down. So I
Right.
think I
Damn
love
it.
the yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm stuck on the Alan Watts because I love Alan Watts and he and his humor too. So
Yeah.
anybody who hasn't read or listened to even some on YouTube, you can find some beautiful lectures of his on YouTube. Highly recommended. So thank you for bringing him into this conversation. And I love that idea too. It's true. And I think that also takes some of the pressure off when people are thinking, yeah, like you and I've been through depression as well, low grade depression through my 20s and not sure what was going on. And then as we do this work, we're like, well, yeah, I thought I was over this. I thought I learned this lesson already. And what I'm hearing from you is yes, you have, but there's like, as you said, layers of the onion. We just keep peeling it and we learn more and we get deeper and deeper. And I don't know if this is true for you. I'm going to guess it is, but even when we get back to those coordinates where it seems like we're in a low point, it doesn't hurt as much. We have a little more love and compassion for those coordinates for ourselves so that we're not so I was going to say self-destructive, but I guess that's a fine enough word to use. We don't beat ourselves up so much because we say, I'm here again, and I'm human.
Yeah.
That's part of shamanism too, is from my experience, is learning to love being fully human and all of what that means, all the good and the bad that goes along with that, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really a tough pill to swallow sometimes. Like, I feel like I almost almost cannot take people seriously who say they don't experience that ever again. Like they're
Yeah. I'm
above and
cured.
beyond. Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm enlightened. I've been
Oh
there.
God.
I've been there like really early, and this is what the friend that I talked about often makes fun of. We both make fun of me when I came from the first or second seminar, And I just said, I'm done with it all. I'm done.
Where's
And
my certificate?
yeah, it's just like I felt so enlightened and so integrated. Like
Hmm.
I've worked through it all, and then a couple of months or years later, there is another layer, like we said before. So I think it's beautiful but difficult sometimes to really say, well, this might not ever go away. This will always come back. It's not like we have that goal where when we reach that goal, then we have bliss and enlightenment in all only peace, inner peace all the time.
Right.
So, and as I mentioned before, Ramdas, who passed away just a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
in this last movie, I think he still talked about that he gets caught by these thoughts and that
Hmm.
it sometimes comes back, right? So I felt like, wow, there is this, to me at least, being that represents masterdom or masterhood
Yeah.
in my point of view. And he says shortly before he dies, it's still ongoing. So,
Yeah.
okay, it might not ever change. This will always or might always continue, and to not do this work in order to reach a place, a destination,
Right. Yes, exactly. And I think and I see this in shamanic communities. I see this in spiritual communities, my Kundalini community. Everybody's shooting for enlightenment, man. That's the goal, is we're going to be enlightened. And it's like, you still have to take the trash out, when
Yeah.
you're enlightened, you still have. And I don't know if it was in this documentary about Ram Dass, but one of my favorite Ram Dass stories is, and it speaks directly to what you're saying. He was just on the rise of his fame, and he was about to give a talk at a university, and he had his assistant tell the people who were setting up the stage to turn. Microphones are usually vertical. He wanted it turned on a 90-degree angle because he sits when he does his lectures on, half lotus on a little pad, right? So he wanted the microphone horizontal. So he got to the stage and he saw that the microphone was vertical, and he got really pissed off. He's like, "Don't they know who I am? I'm Ram fucking Das, And then he stopped and he went, "Ah, I'm still human."
Yeah.
Which is just like, oh, okay, so it doesn't matter how much I've studied or how much I've meditated, things still upset me. I'm still a human being. And to laugh at it instead of saying, "Oh, well, now I'm at square one. Now
Yeah.
I have to start all over again." Right?
Absolutely, and I love that story too, especially for those who don't know it. He said he kind of credits the microphone to be his guru, who was already passed on at that stage, to kind of like to pretend to be the microphone boom to see if he could catch him. So it's kind
Yeah.
of that funny,
Yes.
funny backstory.
Yeah. And I love that too, because that little addition to the story really shows you that almost anything can be your teacher.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a sentient being. And one of the things I love about shamanism also is, there is spirit in everything, because everything is vibrating energy and everything is part of our family. So we're all really siblings. So for a microphone to be a teacher makes perfect sense, or anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
The internet or whatever that goes down when you need it. Um, Beautiful. Tell the listeners, if you would, a little bit about what you're working on now. What's going on in Hawaii?
So this is kind of like my really long-term vision, and it's the backstory is I did a shamanic journey in 2014 at a seminar where my teacher asked us to write down short-term, middle-term, long-term goals and goals that we thought were impossible to
Mm.
implement in this lifetime. And so within this workshop, there came this image of this place in where people would come and heal, and it was really like a really rough sketch, and that is the best thing I can, kind of like a feeling, but also with some imagery. And through the years it grew and grew, and it is starting a sanctuary in Hawaii where people can come and learn kind of learn the same life system that we talked about, but basically on their own if they want to. So they just have that sanctuary place where they can go
Mm.
to, and whatever work they want to do, if it is work they want to do, would be like either farming or buildings, maybe a construction thing, or maybe doing something art with art, music, or sculptures, anything that I feel supports my healing journey right now.
Mm.
And because I have been traveling so much and have been on this spiritual journey, I realized that certain work helps me to support the step that I'm currently going through. Sometimes it's tearing down a wall, or it's really,
Mm.
really hardcore physical labor, and it
Yeah.
helps me. Other times I was creating beauty, something painting or making music. And I felt like this place would be a wonderful place if we could build these sanctuaries in the world, because my my perception of who has access to these kind of places is very limited, because it's oftentimes very expensive. There's great places like great retreats and all these beautiful places, but it's only available for a handful of people who have the necessary money. So I've felt like, let's create an organization that shares the knowledge on, if somebody has, like me, has a destination where they would love to build something like that, then let's help these people, maybe Portugal, Spain, wherever it is, Indonesia,
Hmm.
I want to build a sanctuary. I need some support on how to do that, and to have a community that is um, just supporting to build these kind of refuges or sanctuaries in the world. And for me, it would be Hawaii, but for other people, their happy places is somewhere else, or their homes is
Sure.
somewhere else.
Sure. Beautiful. What a great idea. And the accessibility, because this isn't an elite practice by any means. I mean, shamanism itself was practiced by everyone in villages. Obviously, the core shaman of the group, of the tribe, or the community had specific knowledge, more knowledge. But journeying is accessible to everyone and helpful for everyone. It really does help us to connect with spirit, which is what we're here to do anyway. We're not separate from it as it is, Beautiful.
Absolutely. And I think not everyone feels called to do this work. I see
Mhm.
this in my supervision group. We've been journeying together for almost 10 years now. And even though everyone brings this teaching into their lives on their own way, it's not all of the group who want to teach or work with other people. They just
Right.
use it for themselves. And that is what you just mentioned.
Mhm.
In the tribe or in that village, there were people who were just using these, I don't know, these, not using, maybe they were getting help from that wisdom keeper, and
Mhm.
they were doing their own thing that they did in the tribe. Maybe they, whatever it was, right? And
Right.
so I feel like it is, some people feel called to do that, and those go through the initiations and vision quests and all these things, that these rites of passage, in order to really become familiar with this reality that is really so hard to grasp, or
Yeah.
to, I feel it's so elusive that we need a
Mhm.
lot of practice to know our way around and lead other people in that realm and bring them safely back.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. So if you could leave one message with the listeners today, what would it be?
I think from what we said, it is to, and because it is the name of your podcast, the self-talk, the negative self-talk, when we talk abusively to ourselves, to start awareness, like to begin the process of awareness, of realizing that's what I'm doing. And I think I had a beautiful image of a client who talked to me about it yesterday. It's been a journey that has been a long time ago, but he's still appreciates that journey so much. So we'll really be quick and say he had this experience where there was a higher being that took kind of like a light stick and got a dark fetus or a dark embryo, kind of like a baby, really dark and hideous at first and shocking, but then he realized that it's not an entity. He wasn't kind of like beset, is that right? Like there wasn't something external that was in him, but it was a part of himself. And
Yes.
what he realized was that this part of himself was the way it was because he talked to himself so negatively. He said, I'm shit. And I'm like all this negative wording and all the energy, the anger, if we talk about depression, all the anger that I guide towards myself or put towards myself is what makes this being or this part of myself so small and kind of like debilitated, right? And so if we start seeing that this negative talk and all these abusive ways we treat ourselves is just that we are harming ourselves, a very, very small part of us that needs love, right? And that would really benefit from recognizing this is, here I am again, I'm talking about myself in a negative way. And there is where we start with the compassion process to not judge, oh shit, I did it again. But all right, I did it again. I will give myself love and treat myself well. And, that is what I would give away, or not give away, but what I would subsume our conversation in. If we are able to recognize this negative self-talk, then we are so much better off.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing to share, that, we're not just harming ourselves, we're harming everything around us because everything is connected. So, think about it in terms of how are we contributing to collective consciousness with the way that we even just talk to ourselves. Yeah. Beautiful. Martin, how can people find you?
Usually lighttrails.co, light as in dark or light, and trails as the path.co is my website. And other than that, I'm doing my best to be on social media.
But good for you. Good luck.
YouTube, I would say. I'm in the process of building a little library. It's not big yet, but if you want to check out a guided meditation or something, that. And additionally, I'm doing in the month of April and May, I will be doing a webinar series of guided meditation once a week. So you can just join, and it's a short kind of webinar. It's not a salesy webinar. It's actually a learn and experience-y webinar. So just tune in for that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Martin, it was wonderful to have you on Self Talk, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Rachel Astarte from the Self Talk podcast. I'd love for you to send me your emails with questions or stories about yourself. What are you looking for? What are your questions? What are you grappling with in your own personal life that has to do with your identity, with yourself, with your very existence? These are the things that we're going to talk about during the podcast. And go ahead. It's all right. Get deep. I can handle it. So send them to Rachel@selftalkpodcast.com. And I'll see you on the next episode.